Hey everybody, welcome back to the Senators Roundtable. I'm your host Jacob Billington, joined by Dayton Reimer today. How you doing, Dayton?
Not too bad, thanks. It's warming up over in Saskatoon, so it's always a good thing.
Good. It's just gonna be us today. Our other co-host Paul is somewhere in the desert in Mexico right now, so hope he's doing fine, whatever he's doing. But let's just jump right into things. And Ottawa and Minnesota game just wrapped up. Did you get a chance to watch?
I didn't know. Those are tough games for me to catch. So
Yeah. It was an inspiring loss. There wasn't too much wrong with Ottawa's game. Couple defensive collapses, which led to the game-winning goal. I don't know if you got a chance to even see the clip, but Drake Batherson caught the puck and threw it right to Vinny Lettieri right out
oh,
front, and that was the game-winning goal. So it was a really tough look. But there were three other horrendous plays right before that that um, led to the goal. wasn't wasn't a terrible game. Ottawa looked pretty good. They were the better team for the whole game, I would say. And Jonas Korpisalo again looked great. Um, but yeah, one of those losses that you can take a lot of positives from, especially if you're on Team Tank.
mhm.
Like I have talked about it multiple times that I think that the Senators should develop a winning culture, win games down the stretch. And my mind has changed now that it's too far down the stretch in their winning games. Like they should have started doing this with 25 games left, not 12. Like it's I don't know. I my mind has changed now. And somebody asked me about that. They said, "You said this multiple times. Why are you like on Team Tank now?" And it's just like because it's too late. These games really don't mean anything. Like you didn't have to make the playoffs with some good games, 25 games left in the season, but you just had to win games that weren't meaningless. And here we are.
Yeah. I think I was on record for being on maybe not Team Tank, but Team Let the Young Guys Have a Chance, which is I know that's also Team Tank, but
Just a nice way of saying it.
yeah, I want the Senators to be seeing like basically do a full on audit of their team. Like what do they have? What do they have against, competent competition? Can the young guys step up and play in a major role? And maybe some of the goalies give some life into this team. What can you change to make things better based on what you have right now? And it doesn't seem like they've done that. They just started winning instead, which is annoying.
There are some positives to take away from it, no matter how late in the season it is. Like Jonas Corposalo has looked fantastic over this stretch, and with a goalie, meaningless games doesn't really change much. I don't think with their mentality. So I wonder if this is going to spark some confidence into Jonas Corposalo headed into next season.
I don't know. I'm of the mind that the Senators don't have a goalie problem. They have a system problem, but one of those goalies still need to be moved. And one of my recent posts that said Corpusalo needs to be moved still got a lot of pushback from people saying, no, he's been playing fine. Sure, yeah. Where was that for the rest of the season?
Yeah.
Why was he and Forsberg sitting basically at the very bottom of the NHL for three-quarters of the season? And now, oh no, we can keep him. This is a Bobrovsky thing. He just needs to get his confidence. And sure, maybe, but that's $4 million on a roster that can't really afford $4 million to wait. Like, I think if he had time to, you know, get accustomed and adapt to the system and, maybe this is just a rough transition season. Could be. Goalies are weird, right? But I don't think the Senators are there anymore. I think they've built a roster to push for the playoffs, and now a competent general manager needs to construct a roster to push for the playoffs. Or strip it down and rebuild. I think that's your two options. And I don't know if Corpusalo is the guy you want for a playoff push.
Yeah, that's fair. And I mean, by the play of most of the season, he might be the perfect guy for a rebuild. But now that we're kind of unwillingly on Team Tank, whether that was a choice or not. You have been doing a lot of work on prospects. And actually, before I even ask you about that, I have to ask you, what's that jersey behind you?
That is the Saskatoon Blades. So being in Saskatoon, it's the local team. Got to support the local team. It's one of their alternates from a few years ago. Might be like a decade ago now. I always liked the word mark, and so I picked one up when it was on sale.
Nice. Yeah, I just had to ask. It was bugging me. But yeah, so you've been doing a lot of work on prospects lately. You've been doing a lot of work on the Substack for the Hockey Writers with the draft and prospects work. And then you release your own draft board. So um, you're a great person to be asking this question to. Before we get into names and specifics, we're gonna assume that Ottawa is picking in the 6 or 7 to 10, 11 range. What position or what do the Senators need out of this draft? Is it position? Is it a goaltender? If there's no goaltender that high, but is it a right-handed defenseman? Is it best player available? What's your analysis on that?
I think if you're picking in the top 10, always go top best player available. When you start picking positionally in that range, especially, you pass over guys that are going to make you look stupid. Every year it happens. And I think it's like a 90% success rate for looking stupid. When the Senators picked it positionally back in, what is it, 21, 22? Tyler
21.
Boucher. That looks stupid now. Maybe he becomes a good player, but he'll never surpass some of the guys that he was passed over for because they went positionally.
I'm
They
not even
wanted,
certain Tyler Boucher becomes a player.
right now, I'm of that opinion as well. He can't stay healthy, and so he's not
Yeah.
developing. But he's young, right? There's still a chance. We can't write him off yet. I won't say he's a bust. He's just trending in that direction. But they passed over guys that are going to make the team look stupid. Like, what if they had this? Oh, they really need this right now. Exactly. You don't know what you're going to need in 3 years. That's what these guys are going to take, especially in the top 10. So that's for my little rant. um, if given the option between a defenseman and a forward, I would go forward not because that the Senators don't need defensemen. They desperately need right-handed defensemen. Defensemen take longer. They're going to take 4 or 5 years to become an effective player in the NHL. A forward can get there quicker. And there's some really interesting forwards available in that range who could be impact players in 2, 3 years, which should fit the Senators' timeline a little better.
Yeah, that's fair. I do think the best player available is the only way to go in the top 12, I'll say. Um, just because again, you get these positional guys, and even if you're going best player available, you're still gonna have some misses. Like look at Oli Ulevi, look at Jesse Puljujarvi, look at like there's very recent examples of these guys just not panning out, and that's always gonna happen. There's always gonna be players in a draft that don't pan out, but you're giving yourself the best chance if you just go best player available. You look at your draft board and you say, all right, who do I have in my top 10? And if the guy that you had at fourth is still available at 7 and 8, you go with him. Doesn't matter if he's a center and you already have McDavid, Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins. Like you still go with that center because he's the best player available. Worst case scenario, push him to the wing, right? So you got to go best player available. Now, I want some names in the 7 to 11 range. Who are some guys that you think would be perfect Ottawa Senators? Because there's a lot of names out there. There's some names getting tossed around. It's a pretty good high end of the draft. There's a lot of players to get excited about. Who do you have that you would have at the top of the list?
7 to 11. So just going off who I've highlighted in that range based on my own rankings. Go check out my Substack for further in depth. Got to plug the Substack, right? So I have him a little higher than this, but I think he could fall, and that's Berkeley Catton. He's an under 6 foot center playing with the Spokane Chiefs, and the way he moves the puck is otherworldly. He's just so smooth in his skating, in his puck handling, and his shooting. He was only one of two under 18 players to cross the 100-point threshold and the only one to score 50 goals in the WHL this year. He's really, really good, but he's 5'11". So I think he should be the third forward off the board, but I don't know if he's going to be. He might slip into that seventh range, and if he does, and the Senators are there, grab him immediately because you're going to end up with a Zach Benson situation who went to 13th last year and is already playing NHL games because,
and
oh,
doing
he's
very
little.
well.
Yeah, he's doing great with the Sabres, but oh, he's 5'9". You got to be careful. No, those guys know how to avoid getting hit, especially if they're good skaters. And Catton is one of the better skaters, I would argue, in the draft this year. Yeah, you want more names?
Yeah, give me another one or two more names.
Sure. Most of the right-handed defensemen should be gone by that point, at least the ones that are like high end. I wouldn't expect Artem Levshunov to be around at that point. He's I would argue, the best right-handed defenseman. You maybe want to look at Zane Parekh. He's got defensive issues though. Really, really good offense. Issues on defense. Maybe that's okay. Our editor Matt has pointed out that he's comparable to Quinn Hughes, which is
Not a bad comparison.
that's not a bad comparison at all. Yeah, if you could end up with a Quinn Hughes at around 10th, which is I think where I'd start taking Parekh. I don't know if I'd go higher than that. But he's an option. I wouldn't go Yakimchuk. I think he's too risky. I don't like. I think he's got some pretty good decision-making issues. Really good offense. I question his defense every game I watch. And just why he's making those decisions. TJ Ginla is somebody I'd take in that range. Such a hard worker.
Senators love players that had dads in the NHL.
Oh my goodness. And this one is the best of the group.
Yeah.
So, yeah, really hard worker, great shot. He's not a power forward like his dad. So he's not going to fit in as well as, like a Jerome McGinley would fit into this roster. Because that's kind of, what Brady Katchouk is, right?
Yeah.
But this guy knows how to score goals. He's really, really good at it. And has some strength to add as well. So he could become a little bit more physical than he is, but don't draft him thinking he is Jerome. Draft him because he's going to put in 50 goals in the NHL.
Yeah, he looks really good. There's one player that I've been looking at, and left-handed defense is the last thing the Senators need, but I'm a really big fan of Zeev Boom. I really like his game. Most rankings have him around the 12 to 15 mark, maybe even a little bit lower, but I don't know. He's just one player that I've really liked, and I've watched a lot of his clips this year and watched a lot of his game. And again, I don't think left-handed defenseman is much of a priority right now, but if you're going best player available, he's somebody that I would look at if your pick is closer to 11, 12.
Yeah, I think if the three guys I mentioned are not available anymore, he's a great option. Yeah, he's really creative with the puck. I like what he has to do on offense. He's smart. He's quick, sneaky. So having that on your defense is really good. Another kind of Quinn Hughes comparable in that he doesn't have a lot of defense right now, but it's, I would argue, better than Parekh and Yakimchuk, who are right-handed. So maybe you can get him as strong on his offhand. Because it's, guys do that in the NHL. It's not an uncommon thing. It's just nicer to have the right-handed on the right side.
And Quinn Hughes does have the defense now. Like that can be learned. That can be developed. And as a prospect, points is what a lot of people look at. High points is what's going to get you picked high in the draft. Not in every case, but that's going to stand out to a lot of people. So a lot of prospects kind of focus on that rather than really show everybody that I can defend and whatever. So they're going to go for the points, and then they can develop that defensive side of the game once they're drafted and start working towards an NHL job. And yeah, so I'm not too shy of the players that don't show great defensive coverage as prospects. Um, just
Exactly.
because that can all be developed.
Totally. Yeah. And I admit that, right? But when I'm looking at, who I want to rank and who I want to put above other guys, I want to see good decision making. And I think defense requires a lot of good decision making. You got to make really quick decisions on what angles to cut off and positioning. And with the two guys I've mentioned, Perek and Yakimchuk, really, really high offense. I don't know if the decision making is there. And so it's going to take longer for them to develop a strong defensive side than, say, Zeev Buyam, who I think has a better level of decision making and just hockey intelligence when he's on the ice without the puck. He still looks unsure of himself, but I'm less worried with how he is playing right now with the University of Denver.
Perfect. Well, thanks for letting us dabble in a little bit of your ranking.
Of
Um,
course.
make sure to go check that out on the Substack yet again.
Yeah, Reimer's top 40.
Reimer's top 40.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna stick with the young guys, but kind of more so on the Senators now. Angus Crookshank left tonight's game injured in the second period, which is unfortunate. But he's looked absolutely fantastic since joining the club. He's up on the second line, fitting in like a glove. Tyler Klevin, he's looked incredible as well. Maybe he's not ready for a full-time job yet, but he's still developing. He's still young. He's trending in a perfect direction by the looks of things. And I'm going to throw Boris Katchouk in there too, just because he was a waiver pickup. He's not necessarily a young guy on this team, but he's a new face. He's at the bottom of the lineup, and I love the offense and the balance that he brings to that fourth line with Parker Kelly and Mark Kastelik. He just that line isn't a non-starter anymore. Like with that line, you usually go out there, throw a couple hits, and you get off. And Boris Katchouk kind of adds a huge spark to that line. So I just kind of want to get your thoughts on those three players and how you think that they've fit into the lineup so far, and do you think that they're long term in the NHL?
Yeah, no, I think they are perfect pickups for the Senators. And I would say they've replaced some guys that have expiring contracts. So we'll start with Katchouk. He has fit in really well. 4 points in 12 games, which is fantastic on a fourth line. His career high is just 16, so don't expect him to put up the points. But he's bounced around a little bit and found success wherever he's gone. He's a hard-nosed player. He can play a little bit of that defensive side. He's got the offensive side, and he's tough. So he works well with Kastelik and Kelly, who are also in-your-face, tough, hardworking players. So I think that's a really good line. I hope they keep it together. I think a couple of those guys have expiring contracts.
I,
And
I, I will say that I would like to see Katchouk get an opportunity higher in the lineup just because he's showed so much skill, but he's only getting, I don't know, 7 minutes a night.
sure. Yeah, if there's opportunities, that's great. I don't think I'd like to see him higher than third.
Fair, but when you have Dominic Kubalik playing on the third line, who would you rather
Yes,
see in a more elevated role?
which is what I was going to say is Katchouk has made Kubalik completely expendable if he wasn't already. I think Kubalik was here to fill a role or fill a spot more so. Just put somebody there. There's not really anyone who can fill in. And now we have Katchouk, so that's taken care of. Let Kubalik walk, no more problems on that front, I would say. Yeah, Crookshank as well. He's looked really good. I like how he's developed. He's suffered a few injuries that have put him back, but he knows how to score goals. He's fast. Yeah, man. I really hope he gets a shot in the middle of the lineup because I think he's deserved it. He shouldn't be in the AHL anymore.
I
Um,
agree.
yeah, 46 points in 50 games this year. That's incredible for the AHL. He's a little on the older side too, 24. That's fine. I think this is the time he should be making the NHL for a later round pick. So yeah, no, that's fantastic development. I'm really happy with how he's come.
And I'm glad that he wasn't rushed. He's one of those players that you could have
Yes.
thrown in 2, maybe even 3 years ago and just kind of say, here you go. And then you turn into what Parker Kelly is, right? And that's nothing against Parker Kelly. Every team needs a Parker Kelly or someone like that. But
Mm.
he, he had so much more in him. And I'm glad that the organization was really patient with him to kind of say, listen, like you go and wait until you're a point per game in the AHL, and then we'll call you up and give you a good chance.
Yeah, and I think the injuries kind of forced the team to do that.
Right.
Because Dorian seemed to like to bring in the guys quickly and give them lots of chances early. And I think that hurts prospects more than it helps, especially ones who aren't ready. And Crookshank needed that time, and now he's succeeding. He's excelling, which is great. And then I would say Tyler Klevin has made Brandstrom expendable.
Yeah.
It's maybe a bit more of a hotter take. I think Brandstrom has developed really well on his defensive side. He's a really good puck mover. He's quick on his feet, but he's not a third pairing defenseman. He
I,
should be second pairing on the right team, and the Senators are not the right team for him. And Dorian says basically ensured that it would never be the right team. He never put him in a place to succeed and forced him to play roles that he wasn't comfortable in. And he got comfortable. You know, he's a good hockey player, but I don't think he has a place on Ottawa anymore. And I think the Senators can do a lot better with a lot less money than what he's making, because he's going to need at least $2 million for next year. That's a lot of money for a third pairing defenseman, especially when you got someone like Tyler Klevin on the sidelines. And he's, I think, maybe not quite polished. So Brandstrom does bring a little bit more of that refinement to the game. But if you're playing 8 minutes a night, I don't know if you have to be polished, right?
right. And I agree that maybe Brandstrom doesn't have a place on this roster. But I am going to say if Ottawa moves on from Shabbat or Chikrin, I think you need to keep Brandstrom if you're not getting a defenseman back. And I think that you go after a guy like Dylan DeMello. He's a pending unrestricted free agent. What a perfect fit he would be in Ottawa. So then you run Sanderson, Zub, Shabbat or Chikrin, and DeMello, and then Klevin Brandstrom, and have JBD rolling in and out with Klevin and Brandstrom. I think that's a really good balance of 7 defensemen. And I think that Brandstrom is fine on the third pair if he has somebody that can be a third pair defenseman, if that makes any sense. Like Tyler
Yep.
Klevin, the day he was drafted, was a third pair defenseman, just because that's like you need those guys, and that's they're drafted him to be a really good third pair shutdown defenseman. Um, I think Brandstrom could do really, really well on a third pair with a Tyler Klevin, but he needs that power play opportunity, that second power
Yes.
play unit.
Yeah. Brandstrom has the skills to be a second pairing, puck moving offensive defenseman.
Right.
And Ottawa has done everything in their power to make sure he's not that. There are 3 left-handed defensemen ahead of him, and even subtracting one of them still guarantees that he's on the third pairing. I think you got to move him. I don't know if like Klevin and him would be okay, but someone's playing on their offhand.
I like Brandstrom on his right. I think some of his best games this season have been on the right side of Shabbat.
Okay. No, fair enough. Would you pay him more than 2 million?
Nope,
And I think
I
that
would
might be the
not.
sticking point.
And to be honest, I'm not even advocating for him to be back next year. I just think that it could make sense with the right situation. I do expect that he's gone at the draft, though.
Yeah, I don't know if he has any real trade value. Like you might get a 6th round pick for him.
No, I think you get a lot more than that. I think you're getting a third,
Unsigned though.
but he's an RFA, so it doesn't matter.
Well, true. Yeah, no, I forget that.
And
I
especially
don't
with
know.
how good he's been playing, like with Shabbat out, and that's always how it is. The last 20 games of the season, Shabbat is injured. Eric Brandstrom looks like Eric Carlson. Like it's he just looks really good when he gets a good chance, but he doesn't get a good chance. So hopefully down the stretch here, Eric Brandstrom gets a good enough chance to up his trade value, and maybe he's gone at the draft for a higher pick.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't see him on the team next year. I don't think he gets qualified if he's not traded, which
Yeah.
I think that's all Dorian's fault. I think it would have been great to have him on this team, but he's been put in a place that he can't succeed and crowded out. And that's just how it works sometimes when you have a stupid GM who doesn't build a team well and just loads up on the left side. Now the right side will figure it out, right? Move him around.
Yeah.
It doesn't work all the time.
You mean Eric Branson, Braden Coburn, Josh Brown? They
Oh my
they weren't
goodness.
the solutions.
That's oh, everybody could have told him that good Branson was not going to be the solution.
There's that one tweet that's been going around for I don't know at least a decade now. I need this general manager to give me $1 million a year just to say no twice a year. That's it. Yeah. Is there any other thoughts that you had on kind of any Ottawa Senators news? It's been a while since we've recorded. But there hasn't really been much going on. They've been winning games, which at this point of the year sucks. But yeah, is there any other thoughts you had on anything?
Not a ton. Yeah, it hasn't been a minute since we've recorded here, but there hasn't been a lot to talk about. Senators are doing good when they shouldn't be. Like
Yeah,
it's the same thing every year, right?
every year.
The the Senators do well when the pressure's off, which tells me that not a goaltending problem, it's not a defense problem, it's not a forward problem, it's not a coaching problem, it's a construction problem. This team was built poorly and has the wrong combination of players.
And just one more time, whose fault was that?
I think Dorian's.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to hear it again.
Yeah, no. It's the one catharsis that Senators fans have. Whose fault? Dorian's fault.
Yeah. And
Um,
a little bit of pressure off of him. It was only him for forever, other than Pierre Maguire, which was even worse than just
oh,
having Dorian. So to give him a little bit of credit, it was just him. He didn't have anybody to tell him no,
that is true.
other than Melnick's wallet.
Yeah, Melnick helped anything, but Melnick was in charge for some success,
Yeah.
right? I don't want to give him too much credit, but he has passed away, which is always sad.
Yeah.
And anyways, I think of it as like those really big movies with all the big name actors, and they just throw them all together and think the big name actors will be able to carry the film. And then you go and watch it and think this is a tire fire. None of them have chemistry. None of them are working together. They all want the spotlight and none of them are getting it. And it's just a mess. And I think that's how the Senators have been constructed is they've brought in all these guys who are going to be great. Doesn't matter. Evgeny Dadonov, he'll be great. Tarasenko, he'll be great. DeBrincat, he'll be great. Doesn't matter. And it does. You need to find guys who work together well. And Brady Katchouk can say, like, oh, this is guy is a fantastic player. This is really good. But if they're not working well together on the ice, then that's the problem. You need to have guys who aren't big name players that you find with cheaper contracts and better, I don't know, you find better chemistry, right? And we talked about Angus Crookshank. That's a guy that is perfect for Ottawa. He's a low end draft pick, fifth round, I believe, who has emerged as a fantastic goal scorer in the minors and should be able to translate that to the NHL. He won't be making a lot of money, probably under $1 million for the next season or two. That saves the Senators a lot of money. And He's already shown that he works well with this team. Another guy, Tyler Klevin, works well with this team. Boris Katchouk works well with this team. Those guys are finding success and they don't cost a lot. So you don't need to go chasing big name free agents. You still need some of those top end guys, but you don't have to chase every big name that comes available. I think you just need to be a lot smarter with this construction of the team. And I think Staios is doing that. He got rid of Tarasenko for whatever he could get, which I think was a win. This Tarasenko was fine, but he wasn't making the team better. So,
yeah, Ottawa needs to do what Kyle Dubas did in Toronto and just keep pulling guys in and out until something works, like he did with, and I guess I'll put what Brad Treliving has done as well. But like Tyler Bertuzzi, Max Domi, Michael Bunting, they tried Nick Ritchie. Like just keep trying all these guys that are making less than $4 million or $4 million or less, and just see which one fits, right? And just see which one works. And eventually you find a Michael Bunting who you can sign for 2 years at under $1 million and have him score 60 points a season. Like that was insane. But you do find those guys. It might take you a few Nick Ritchies to get there, but you do find them.
Yep. Yeah, hopefully Staios can keep looking for those guys. I think he's shown that he can with Katchouk. I think that's a really smart pickup because that's an underrated guy who you can sign cheap for the next couple of years, and he'll be a competent competitor in the bottom six, and maybe he works in the second line. Who knows, right? Give him a shot, see if it works. I think having a coach on Staios' side will help. I don't know if Jacques Martin is that guy. I think Jacques Martin's a little bit. I think his best days are behind him. I think he's still a good coach, but he's no longer a great coach.
I agree. All right. So that's gonna wrap things up for today. Running out of time here, and I'm running out of energy. So, yeah, this has actually been a really good episode. It wasn't really sure where the conversation was gonna go, but it went in some pretty good places. Lots of good talk, especially with the draft pick and some potential prospects there. So leave some thoughts in the comments if you've been following the kind of prospect pool of the 2024 draft and who you think the Ottawa Senators should target. And thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.